served on this board from 2014 to 2019, and unfortunately passed away last week. So I've asked that we recognize her service to the board with a moment of silence as we remember her and her service to not just this district, but the county. Thank you. All right, here to select order of business, I have no changes at this point. So I'll ask that we roll into the superintendent's report with Brian.
Thank you, Tim. Good evening, everyone. The first part of the agenda specifically relates to snow days. The State Department of Education is not allowing remote/distance snow days for districts this year. So we'll have traditional snow days for this current year, 2021, 2022. The State Department of Education in Connecticut is developing standards for next year. And I think I'm optimistic that they'll give local school districts the option for remote/distant snow days next year. I just want to update the board on that. Does anyone have any questions?
Is there a reason why they took that option away?
They really want kids to be in person as much as possible. Versus last year, the kids were out in some districts.
Thank you.
Would it be possible we could do what we did last year, give them some days off and then meet on other snow days?
No, they're not allowing that this year.
No, but next year, maybe.
Yes, absolutely. They have to approve that, but it looks like they will approve the next year.
Because I know the children and the parents don't like to have snow days. And I think they do need it once in a while. Thanks.
Any other questions of the snow days this year?
Just a question, if, not that I'm hoping we don't have excessive snow days, but do you think they would flex if the district had excessive snow days, or looking at, coming up against the end of June?
No, I don't see that.
No.
Very firm.
Any other questions?
Thank you. The final piece on the agenda, we have our special education development plan. This has been an annual exercise over the last few years. As you know, Kelly and Amanda, the principals, did a fantastic job last meeting as far as their development plans. And they're aligned with our 5-year strategic plan. Barbara's plans are aligned with the schools. Improvement plans, development plans, focusing on the district goals of improving student achievement, improving school climate, and expanding technology-based opportunities for kids. And I'm very pleased, and I don't want to steal Barbara's thunder. The Special Education Department has identified and we've seen some growth as far as student achievement. So we're very pleased about that. And without further ado, Barbara.
Good evening. Thank you, Superintendent Murphy, Chairman Goff, and members of the board. I'm very excited to be here this evening to present the Department of Student Services Program Development Plan for the 21-22 school year. As Superintendent Murphy intelligently stated, this plan is a collaborative effort and a partnership between administrative team and district staff to ensure alignment and coherence in order to improve student achievement and growth for all learners in our district. I'd like to recognize and acknowledge our curriculum coach, Heather Mathis, our principal, Kelly Carroll, and principal Amanda Shaw for your partnership and support in So building coherence in New Hartford. Basically what this means is these are our daily actions, things that we do every single day with our students to improve student growth and outcomes. At the center of this is improved student achievement. We believe in continuous improvement in our district. So what that means is that if we provide our students every single day with amazing learning opportunities, with rigorous content and curriculum, and providing our teachers with the resources and support that they need to meet students' needs, we will adapt for and improve student achievement for throughout the presentation, so I'm not going to take any bullet points off. But what's important for you to recognize here is that our four main areas are the learner focus, which is the instructional core. Building programs and community partnerships is vital to what we do in September education. It ensures that we're able to keep our most at-risk and high-achieving learners here in the district, which is perspective. Organizational effectiveness means that we've got systems in place to ensure that we can keep the focus on teaching and learning. Whether that has to do with systems for protocols in COVID-19 or how we implement our teaching process, we have strong systems in place in partnership. So I'd like to thank my incredibly talented and dedicated staff for supporting that work and working collaboratively with our families and partners to make that happen. And then lastly, cultivating talent. Again, part of the instructional core is making sure our teachers have all the resources that they need so that they can meet the needs of our learners. And these are heavily in training for our special education staff. So the Department of Student Services has 4 goals within their development system. We're focused on literacy, math, social and emotional learning, and leveraging technology. Those are the 4 pieces that Superintendent Murphy mentioned in his strategic plan, and it just goes to show, again, another example of how we remain in alignment. What we do to reach these goals starts within our department, which is a little bit different compared to what's happening in regular education. Now we do that. So the next couple of slides outline our theory of action within our department. So these, in a sense, are our big steps. And we believe that if our department creates accessible conditions for the relevant and rigorous learning opportunities, we will be able to close the opportunity gap for all of our learners, ensuring that all of our students access their instructional learning.
Would you mind pulling the mic over? Getting complaints that they can't hear you on the. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
Okay. All right. A little bit. I'm gonna stand here. Sorry if I have my back to some of you. Okay. So our theory of action 1 and 2 is focused on literacy and math. So we're continuously aligning and looking at data through our professional learning communities. We're making sure that we're progress monitoring and that we're continuing to look for patterns and trends as educators to determine what our children need for supports. We use a number of internal curriculum assessments to make that happen. We have foundational literacy assessments called DIBELS, which looks at phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, comprehension, and vocabulary development. We also have writing prompts. We have math assessments, and we have smarter balance, summative growth assessments as well. So all of these things come together. We're looking at our data. We're determining what actions and interventions we need to put into place. And then we go through that continuous process of progress monitoring and making shifts to ensure that all of our children are learning. One thing that we're really, really proud of this year is that within DIBELS, we are now able to progress monitor in grades K through 6. In the past, we could only do K through 3. So that ensures that our targeted systematic interventions that we're using for special education are aligned all the way through. So we're very proud of that work. The third theory of action is around creating a safe school climate within our social emotional supports. I'm going to give a quick shout out to one of our school psychologists. She's in the room today, Jennifer Harris. We are so incredibly proud of the work we're doing within this field. We have identified a universal screener that we piloted last school year, and we've had tremendous success with it. We've been able to screen over 70% of our school population and identify students in need of intervention and supports as a proactive measure to support needs involving internal and external behaviors. So we have of the students we've screened, we've identified about 25% of those students who will be receiving a 6-week intervention cycle. And that's really critical because this speaks to the holistic approach within our field that we need to make sure our students are available for learning. And if we meet the social emotional needs, then they'll feel safe and secure and they'll be ready to access the academics. The fourth theory of action is around using technology as a tool. So in special education, we really do this through those community partnerships that I mentioned earlier in the presentation. Some of our students, their main mode of communication is through these tech tools. They use something called augmented communication devices, and that's how they have autonomy within their learning. Some of our students are nonverbal, and this is the only way they can access. So we make sure that we're up to date with best practices, and we're partnering with New England Assistive Technology, Boston Children's, and the Bureau for Services for the Blind. So those are just a few of our partnerships, and they're really, really critical to ensuring that we're meeting the needs of all of our students. So how do we know we're on the right track? Well, in special education, we have a couple of different areas of indicators. We're looking to make sure that our students are making satisfactory growth and mastering their IEP goals and objectives. We're also looking for growth over time on curriculum-based measures. These are the same measures that are happening within regular education. In smarter balanced assessments, we're looking specifically at the IDEA subgroup. IDEA stands for Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. It's just a long acronym for this high need subgroup. And we're also looking for growth on our social and emotional screeners. So for the next couple slides, I'm giving you a summary of our academic results. I want this to feel a little bit meaningful, so I decided to focus on what we're doing in literacy. And as you can see, we've really made some tremendous growth in special education, including the achievement gap from 18 to 10% in kindergarten. Grade 2, we closed that internal gap. So when I say internal gap, it's in comparison to their regular education peers. We closed that by 8%, and all of our students are making growth. Again, we use DIBELS a little bit differently in special education. In regular ed, K to 3, we use it as a universal screener to identify students at risk for reading disability. In special education, we use it as part of our professional learning community and our progress monitoring to make sure that the interventions we have in place are on track and that our students are making growth. If we find every 6 weeks when we progress monitor that we're not seeing growth, we make a shift in what we're doing within our interventions and practices. So that they really tie nicely together, and those DIBELS skills are the foundational skills that then we look at the Fountas and Pinnell running records, and we see, are our students able to apply those skills so they're learning to make growth? We're looking for students to grow 3 to 4 levels a year in order to start to close that achievement gap. So we're very pleased with those key diagnostic tools that we're using because we do see a lot of growth in our students. However, I would be remiss not to mention the impacts of COVID-19, and it has certainly had an impact on our high needs subgroup. This next slide shows a comparison of where our students were and what grade they were in 2018-19, then the COVID year, and then how they ended up in 2020-21. So we see that all of our students are growing, but the rate in which they're growing has slowed in this subgroup. So our students with special education needs were absolutely impacted by this pandemic. And some of the interventions and actions that we're putting into place are the tighter aligned progress monitoring. And also, I'd like to thank the principals again. We worked very closely to ensure scheduling for a double literacy block. So that means our students, our special education students, are in their classrooms for their core literacy instruction, and then they get pulled out in addition for a double dose of reading at another point in their school day. This ensures that they're getting up to 2 hours of reading instruction a day, which really is the best practice to close the internal gap. This is a summary snapshot of our Smarter Balanced Summative data. And again, it looks at a comparison between the 18-19 school year and the 2020-2021 school year. Something that we're very proud of is both the IDEA subgroup, which is our special ed subgroup, and our high needs subgroup did make movement in that school year despite the challenges of COVID. Our IDEA subgroup grew about 15%, which is significant. And a high needs subgroup closed that internal gap by 7%. In math, however, we are noticing kind of a decline or a stagnant movement. So some of the things that we are looking to do here is, again, a commitment for special education students to be in their classroom during the core instruction and then receiving additional math supports beyond that. Our special education teachers are also receiving training in the new illustrative math curriculum. And when appropriate in specialized instances, we also seek outside math consultant services. These are the graphs. They're a little bit blurry of our social emotional screening results. But essentially what they are telling us is that we screened 71% of our students district-wide on the social emotional screener. And of that, we had about 21% of the students present as overall elevated scores, meaning that they need a specific intervention group. So here's an additional information. I like this triangle chart here because it shows you that the universal screener, so 80 to 90% of our students in tier 1 are everybody's getting ruler. We all use ruler in district. And that 21 to 25% of students are in the tier 2 group, which means they're getting that targeted 6 weeks intervention in the SEL, specifically looking at self-control, adaptive skills, how to cope with internal feelings of anxiety, which is something that you might not see presented outwardly, but it's an inward feeling. So making sure our children have those coping skills is really critical. And then these last 2 slides are something that I'm incredibly proud of within our department. So we've had a number of specialized programs and supports. We're thrilled that we have unified sports back this year. Our RISE program at the primary schools and extended resource at Antolini and our preschool program are all in-district programs ensuring that we're meeting the specialized needs of all of our learners so that they can stay in district. We've got those screeners. This past year, we received grant funding, which allowed us the opportunity to expand our extended school year services. And we are actually able to double the number of participants within that program and double the length of time from an hour and a half of tutoring a day to 3 hours. And that was really targeted, intensive reading and math instruction. We also have a very strong presence on the district SRBI teams from our special education team members. As I mentioned earlier, we're expanding our progress monitoring. We've added additional curriculum research-based tools to the OG philosophy, or in Gillingham, which is the best practice for teaching students that present with dyslexia, and that double literacy block, which is the 2 hours of reading a day. And lastly, going back to that instructional core, building staff capacity, we have, like I said earlier, invested heavily in training. I am the CPI trainer in nonviolent crisis intervention for our district, and later this year, I'll be training up to 30 staff members in that process, and it's really in an effort to teach our staff the tools needed to de-escalate a crisis situation. We've also trained all of our nursing staff on protocols and practices and the legislative mandates around COVID-19. We partner closely with Farmington Valley Health in making those decisions. We have our professional learning communities. Heather Mathis, our curriculum coach, took the time to make sure that our special education staff was ready to go with the expansion of our DIBELS progress monitoring. So thank you for that. We've supported a successful transition to a full-time social worker during the pandemic. We have 3 staff members in year 2 of Orton Gillingham training, which is very intensive, almost master's level schoolwork. We have 1 teacher who's OG certified in training. We continue with Ruler. We continue with our partnerships with our outside consultants. And we are absolutely thrilled to be doing this work. We know that it takes a village to support the needs of our children in district. And we could not do it without all of your continued support and partnership. So I thank you all for your time and attention and listening to this presentation. And I will open it up to any questions. Thomas?
When formulating your charts and your graphs, this is strictly for special ed, correct? So when Amanda, and Kelly did their presentation last week, are these numbers also incorporated in what they presented, or is it like as a whole?
So these numbers are presented just within the special ed subgroup, so they're pulled out, but we compare them to all of their peers.
And then they're also moved into the school as a whole when they did their presentation, correct?
Yeah. Good question.
Do we survey parents regarding what we do in our special? Do they get separate? How do you, I guess my real question is, how do you take their feedback into this development?
Thank you.
Parents of-
Thank you for that question. So in the past, we have had our parents surveyed through, we give them a special education survey, and part of those questions would get embedded into this, and they would give feedback and input on how they feel things are going within the special education process. This past year, it was done a little bit differently. The state put out a special education parent survey, and we are still awaiting those results, so they are not included in this presentation. But typically, absolutely, yes, we take that feedback very, very much to heart, and we like to include that in the process.
Yeah, we can see that. Yeah, go ahead. Can you repeat that? Barb just walked over. I want you to hear. Go ahead.
Thank you for that question. So just ask what was the biggest impact on the reason why there was special education impacts due to COVID. So I think it's a number of things, but I think one of the things that was very impactful were the quarantine and the length of quarantine. Some of our students had more than one quarantine over the course of the year, so there was just the lengthiness and the continuity of what was happening within education. And so we're pleased and thrilled that the state now has state protocol and there are some different options and tools available to districts because we all know there are parts of students that are here. So I would say that was probably one of the bigger factors.
Catch that, Tom. Any other questions?
Great presentation, thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. Okay. There we will move into public comment and communication to the board. Before we get to public comment, we did received a letter in our packet from Judy Palmer, Superintendent of Region 7, and she was recognizing Regional's designation as a National Blue Ribbon School, and was commending New Hartford Public Schools on their important role in regional success. So I thought that was pretty cool that Regional won National Blue Ribbon, and of course, we helped feed those students in that school. So just wanted to recognize Julie's letter, and we have that in your package as well. I received no other communication, Brian.
We do not have any additional.
So from there, we will move into public comment. No, she- From there, we'll move into public comment. If you plan to speak tonight, I ask that you state your name and address. Keep your mask up when you're at the mic. 5 minutes will be allotted to each speaker, maximum 20 minutes each subject matter. No boisterous conduct shall be permitted at any Board of Education meeting. Persistence in boisterous conduct shall be grounds for summary termination by the chairperson and that person's privilege of address. If necessary, the chairperson may clear the room before continuing the meeting, and no oral presentation shall include charges or complaints against any employee of the Board of Education, regardless of whether or not the employee is identified in the presentation by name or another reference which tends to identify an individual. All charges or complaints against employees shall be submitted to the Board of Education under the provisions of the BOE policy. So if anybody would like to speak?
Hello, and thank you for having me here tonight and giving me the opportunity to speak with you all. My name's Tim Russell. I live at 77 Evergreen Crossing in New Hartford. I'm a husband, a father of 3 children, a police officer, and obviously a resident of New Hartford. I'm here now because I can no longer stay silent when it comes to my children. All of us here tonight are here because we love our children. They are our lives and our future. They are everything to us, which is why this conversation is so important. As parents, it is up to each and every one of us to raise our children in the best way we see fit. With that being said, the way I might raise my children is different from the way each of you might raise your child. But that is the great thing about America. We have the freedom to choose what is best for our children. It is the exact thing that makes this country special, successful, and different. Freedom of choice. Let's think about that. It's not only what this country was founded upon, but it is the God-given right we were all born with, free will, to choose between right and wrong, good versus evil. Unfortunately, at this point in time, the school system and superintendent are going along with the mob rule of illegal mandates instead of standing for what is right, standing for parent choice. Yes, I am talking about masks, but it's masks now. Then what? Forced vaccinations? As parents, we know what is best for our children, not the government. If you are a parent who is nervous or scared and want your child to wear a mask, that's great. Have them wear a mask. It's called freedom. But also, if you do not want your child to wear a mask, the government should not be mandating it. Again, it's freedom. You know, it's easy to go along with the mob rule, but it's the people who stand up and speak up for what is right who make the biggest difference. I am here now and calling on you as the school board and the superintendent to be that difference. You have a voice. You have a platform. You can be the difference. Advocate for our children, do what is right, and others will follow you. I will follow you. Be the example. So let's unmask our children. Give them the opportunity to show their smile, to be seen for their innocence, to express and feel empathy and compassion for others, and to breathe the clean air God gave them instead of breathing in toxic carbon dioxide. In closing, I will end with some words from the great Benjamin Franklin, who was quoted saying this in 1775, and his statement rings more true today than ever before. Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. Thank you for your time. Let's save our children.
there, we will move on to the consent agenda. Brian, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I do not at this time, no.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Tony, your second? Heather seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. It's unanimous. Okay. So from there, we go to reports with Kelly from the policy subcommittee. So everything is red. We're speaking. Got it. Okay, so it starts with integrate the principles. Tom?
What part? Oh.
Yeah,
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
that's referring to the general statute, Connecticut general statute that was passed by the legislature.
Right.
Any other questions on this policy?
Tim? My husband said YouTube lost the sound.
Sounds fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll just have to yell. All right, go ahead, Kelly, next one.
Okay, policy 25144. This is a new policy.
Okay. Brian, can you explain what we're doing now? As far as disciplinary action?
Yeah, so we're basically following this policy already. This is just codifies it as far as what we're doing already. We're not using as punishment as far as physical exercise as punishment, as stated in this policy. We're not punishing students by taking away recess unless it's a very specific, unique situation. And we try to provide opportunities for physical exercise as much as we can with our students. Yes, that's a good idea.
Any further questions on this policy? Okay. Hearing none, we move on to the third, food service.
Do you have other funds available to charges
Yes,
at the end of the year?
we've had a philanthropic organization pay for that in the past. If not, we use our operating fund.
This is obviously for the future, and we're still on the free lunch program.
That's correct, yes.
As long as you take what is, is it like if they get extra milk, they have to pay for it?
Yes.
Or if they
It's
get,
a second lunch, they have to take, yes.
or if they get something that's not in the,
A la carte, yes.
yes. So it's free, but it's still charged. Right.
Any further questions regarding this policy? So we are good to forward those on to the second read next meeting. From there, we move on to new business. So an update on Region 7 committee meetings. So back in, I believe it was August, Ryan and I received emails from Molly Sexton Reed, the Board of Ed Chair at Regional 7. And Molly was asking or gauging interest in each of the four towns and getting together and discussing our efficiencies, discussing on where our districts are struggling, discussing ways on how to improve between the four schools or four towns and Region 7. So we attended, Brian and I attended a meeting. She invited Board of Education chairs from the four towns, Board of Finance chairs from the four towns, and Superintendent from the four towns. We went up and attended the meeting that was held on September,
First week of September.
yeah,
first or second.
September 6th, I believe is what it was. And there was just a lot of discussion about what we're doing currently and where our districts are struggling, how we can improve. So we just threw out some ideas out there, discussed some things. It's kind of an initial meeting. The conversation turned towards possible consolidation of K through 12 districts. To be perfectly frank, it didn't really go anywhere. North Fork and Colebrook are very stuck in on it, and they're the two smallest districts. So it didn't really gain a lot of traction, to be perfectly blunt. They held another meeting on November 4th, in which Brian and I unfortunately did not attend. And there wasn't any further discussion from what I understand on the consolidation issue. There is Terry Guilfoyle from our Board of Finance has been doing a enrollment study to kind of get a better sense of what the financial impact is going to be to regional, to each town, by sending kids to regional over the next several years. So I wanted to just give the board an update on that. Of course, this being my last meeting, whoever the next board chair taking over will, of course, be able to attend those meetings with Brian and update the board moving forward. Molly did open it up after last meeting to any board member who wants to attend. If you want to attend those meetings, talk to Brian, and you're welcome to join with those meetings after meeting 7. Right now, there is no future meeting scheduled at this point, but that could change. So I want to update the board on that. If you have any questions, I don't have a lot of up-to-date info, but I'd be happy to give you any info that I do have.
So what was, of the 4 towns, what did our parents think about consolidating schools?
Nobody was warm to the idea at all. Yeah. It was billed as a community conversation that kind of abruptly turned to consolidation. And there was a couple of individuals there from other towns that were pushing the narrative as far as consolidating or moving K-12 up to the campus. So there's a lot of ideas thrown around, but to be perfectly honest, nothing's done.
But there's no way that all those children can sit up there without a massive hill.
I don't know. That's what Terry is. That's what he is.
I mean, put all the K through 6 children up there from all the 4 towns.
Not to mention bus travel.
And
How
buses.
long are those kids gonna be on a bus to get from home to school and back? Like, some of that's inappropriate for little guys, you
I
know?
think it's very early in the conversation, and I don't, just judging by the lukewarm response that some of the other towns were giving, it didn't seem like it was gaining a lot.
Did you get a copy of the PowerPoint slide thing that she was?
There wasn't even a PowerPoint
Well,
slide.
not, but when they gave out suggestions, and she was writing bullet points, did you get a
I,
copy?
no, I did not.
Do you think it would be possible to get a copy?
Brian can sure get that from Molly. Any minutes that were associated.
It'd be nice for the rest of us to know what was said, so we can be warned.
Any other questions?
It's a scary thought.
Right now, there is not. Okay. So from there, we will move on to our executive session portion of our meeting. So is there a motion to enter executive session for the purpose of discussing the records and reports of negotiations with the New Hartford Administrators Association, possible action concerning tentative agreement reached for a successive collective bargaining agreement, and invite Superintendent Murphy to join us.
I'll make that motion.
Before we go into executive
I'm sorry.
session, just one more thing. I just want to wish all the best to Tim and Heather in the last meeting tonight. Thank you for your support of the kids in New Hartford. You really help create additional learning opportunities for kids. And we wish you all the best. So thank you
Thank you.
on behalf of the board for everything you did for the kids in New Hartford. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Heather, please stay in touch.
Okay, so there is a motion on the floor to enter executive session. Is there a second? Kelly seconds. All those in favor? Unanimous.
Okay, we'll ask everybody to clear the room, close the doors. Tom, if you can remain as private as you can.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank
you.